All right, everyone. This is for another podcast episode. I have Arthur Kolker, CEO and founder of StayFi. I'm a big fan of him and his company, what they've been able to establish within a couple years. They're going to be hitting the market really hard, and they're going to be doing great things with people in our industry to help, gather guest data and help them market our companies, right? So, thank you for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Terry. Great to be here and looking forward to speaking with you today.
Awesome, man. So tell us a little bit about yourself, right? Where you're from, what made you start StayFi, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I'm based here in New York City, and I started StayFi in around 2018. My background's in digital marketing and branding, and I kind of fell into the short-term rental industry accidentally. So one of my really good friends from business school happened to run a short-term rental company with around 100 listings called Heirloom. And when I met them, they had no direct bookings. So all of their bookings, almost all of them were coming from Airbnb, some from Vrbo. And they came to me looking to build a strategy to become less dependent on these large booking channels and build their own independent brand. Not just because they wanted to decrease what they were spending. Obviously, it costs money to list on those sites as they take a percentage of every booking. But they really thought investors would be more interested in their company if they had an independent guest booking brand. So they hired me, and then the most immediate challenge I saw with building that direct booking business is they had no guest information. So when guests were booking on Airbnb or Vrbo, maybe they were able to capture the name and email of the primary guest, but they had
Mhm.
large properties with 12, 15, even 20 adults staying at one time. And we thought that if we had this information, emails, names, phone numbers from the entire guest party, that would really jumpstart our ability to drive repeat traffic to all the cities where they had properties. So initially, I just thought, what's the one system every guest interacts with during the stay? It's the Wi-Fi. Why can't we just throw in use at a cafe, like at a Starbucks or an airport, where you have a branded captive portal that would not only introduce the brand when you connect, but then also collect information. And it just turned out there weren't any companies servicing the space. So I talked to the folks that do cafes, like there's a Yelp Wi-Fi product, something called Beambox that does a lot of large chain restaurants. It was just super expensive. The hardware they used was more for like hundreds of people connecting at one time, not 15 or 20. And there wasn't anyone that had something for short term rentals. So that's really where the idea came from. I built a super basic version of StayFi for Heirloom, validated that there were a lot of other short-term rental companies that wanted to develop independent brands and build that direct relationship with guests. And that's kind of how the whole journey started to where we are today, where we're in, almost 10,000 short-term rentals, mostly in the United States.
Oh, wow. That's awesome, man. 10,000. That's a lot of
Getting
properties.
very close. Yeah.
I bet. So what's the plan for StayFi moving forward? Because you guys
Yeah.
established your footprint here already, but what's the next steps?
Yeah, I mean, now that we are working with property managers, really of all sizes. So we have a ton of folks with one, two, three, four, five listings that maybe want to build a brand or maybe just want to, run one property and, drive a repeat guest kind of business. And then we have folks that manage hundreds of properties, right?
Hmm.
And so we really want to build the full tool set so that people can use our platform to not only gather guest data seamlessly and efficiently through a captive branded splash page, but have all the tools surrounding that guest data collection to actually drive repeat traffic. So to date, we've launched a text marketing tool. So you can
Oh, okay.
easily send text marketing messages to guests that have stayed with you, both automated, do review collection through text marketing. So kind of like a whole suite of short-term
Mm.
rental specific text marketing tools. And now in partnership with an email marketing agency, which I can talk about a little bit, we launched our own email marketing tool. Because we had a lot of folks come to us that, maybe they set up a MailChimp account, but we're like, we have 1,000 guest data, guest emails, and we've never sent an email. So we had very little visibility, even though we connect to MailChimp. we can't see if people are actually taking the information and using it. So we built our own email tool so that we can help folks, especially starting out, kind of like, how do I launch my first email campaign? How do I set up an automation? Bringing that in-house just makes it easy for us to ensure that all of our customers are effectively using the data that they're collecting.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. I actually didn't know that last part, but that's actually very useful. You'd be surprised how many people don't use the data they collect. It just sits there, right?
Exactly.
So I completely understand about how that works. For people who don't understand like how the whole concept of your company, how it works, like what do they need to do to
Mhm.
like once they get the product, like what's the whole step-by-step process?
Yeah, so we're a self-service tool, which means that you can go to our website, sign up, and go through all the steps, which we'll talk about in a second, and set up StayFi. So there's no long-term contracts. Like I said before, you can have one property or 1,000, right? It's really open to you how much you want to use it. So you go to the website, create an account. Once you create an account, there's a list of steps about things like creating a splash page. So obviously the guests will log in through this captive portal that launches on their device. So you can create that, add your logo, your text, decide where guests will be redirected after they log in. So you can send them to your own website or to a digital guest guide after they actually log into the Wi-Fi for the first time.
Mhm.
Create a property, and when you create a property in StayFi, you can set an occupancy alert. So we also are counting how many unique guests are on the Wi-Fi, so you can get a trigger if there's 15 folks when you only sleep 10 in a property. And then the last step to set up StayFi, you order a device from us called an access point, and that's kind of the trickiest bit. So when you order this device, we ship it to you, and it plugs directly into your router. When it plugs into your router, it will broadcast a new Wi-Fi network, which is typically named like your brand guest network. And that's the network that you then instruct guests to join that will launch the captive portal automatically. Most people, especially if they manage on behalf of homeowners or have a lot of connected devices on the home's existing Wi-Fi, actually keep that running. So you can have, Spectrum A, B, C running in the background, but you just change the guest instructions to join this new network. And if you manage several properties, it's actually the same network in all homes. So you have one set of guest Wi-Fi instructions for all properties. The network guests join. You can have a password or leave it open. It's totally up to you. And then once you plug it in, see the guest network change instructions, you're good to go. And then you'll see all the guest information within our portal that you can log into, and you can integrate that with an email tool that you're already using, whether you've had a lot of success with MailChimp or Constant Contact or ActiveCampaign. You can have the data sent automatically to what you're using today. Or if you're new to email marketing or want to transition, you can use our own email marketing tool, which we built in partnership with an agency called Switchback. And then once you set it up, you're pretty much good to go. And you'll see around 80 to 90% of the guests will collect information from. So if you have 10 guests staying in your property, you'll typically get 8 to 9 unique emails over the course of their stay.
Oh wow, that's awesome. The more data you can collect, the better,
The
right?
better. Exactly.
That's so crazy. Have you ever like what do you think is so important when you're in this industry, like you have to market? Can you explain why it's important to take your route and actually do marketing even after a guest stays and explains that whole
Yeah.
process?
I think in the last few years, people have realized that listing site dependence is a huge risk, because that Airbnb could change their rules overnight. They could, change how their algorithm works so that your properties aren't being listed as high as they used to be. You can see a huge drop in revenue. They can change their policies, their fees, anything can be changed at any time, really without your control. And same with the other booking platforms. So I'd say most of our customers kind of realize that they want to hedge against risk with, I call it OTA dependence, as well as reduce fees that they're paying OTAs, which of course could also rise over time. We really, in the US at least, we have a duopoly. There's really only Airbnb and Vrbo are going to account for 89% of bookings, and then Booking.com is a small share, and then kind of a huge fall off after that, right? So there's not a lot of
Mhm.
competition. So you're kind of forced or subject to the whims of these giant companies, right? So developing your own independent brand has a lot of advantages outside just some immediate financial benefits of reducing what you're spending on commissions to those channels, right? So, when you approach how am I going to build my own brand where I'm attracting guests, the most obvious source of where you're going to get bookings is people that have had stays that they loved before, because people tend to travel to the same destination repeatedly. And then once they find a vacation rental they love, booking a new one is actually quite risky, because if you, as a consumer, go to Airbnb or Vrbo and you book a new home, you're always kind of wondering, like, what's it really going to be like? Once people find a property they love booking it again. And that's the behavior we see. Even with customers that have hundreds of properties, the most common consumer behavior is booking the same home again and again every year or several times a year. So it's really about building up that base of reliable guests that will come visit your property again and again, and then who you trust as well, right? So there's less risk on your side if the guests are good guests, right, and aren't going to throw a party or do other things. And we're really just building that connection seamlessly with guests, because we're collecting their information. We're introducing your brand, because if they came from an Airbnb type source, they don't know who you are or what you do. And the splash page and redirection gives you the opportunity to introduce who you are, why you're different than an OTA like Airbnb, and the value and money saving on the guest side also with Booking Direct. So, a lot of advantages to brand building, and then also on homeowner acquisition, which you talk about too. Obviously, if you're managing properties, right, having a huge guest list is an advantage in attracting new homeowners, because if you're totally Airbnb and don't have a brand, you're not going to be able to drive as many bookings for a prospective homeowner than somebody that has a list of 20,000 people that have stayed in their properties. So if you're pursuing property management as well, there are benefits to developing this, loyal guest database that spills over into helping attract new homeowners to your program.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. It's just the fact that you guys are implementing new tools into the suite that you're mentioning. What do you think the effectiveness of text messaging is when it comes to marketing? Like, what's your point of view on that avenue?
Yeah, it's kind of like text messaging and email are kind of inverses of each other. So email has very high opt-in rates, but lower open and click-through rates, right? So maybe we can get almost all the guests to opt into your email, but an average email campaign will only have 15 to 20% open rate. Maybe only 2% of all the recipients of the email will click through. Text messaging is the opposite. So you get much lower opt-in rates, maybe 20, 30%, but open and click-through rates are sky high. So like 98% of people will see the text message. So I say, like, it's more, use it for things that are very exciting and high value for your list. So examples are, in StayFi, we have a welcome campaign. So right after someone logs into the Wi-Fi, it will trigger a text message. And you can use that to say, do you want to stay here again? Here's how you book directly. Or you want to book this again for next year? Here's a code. Or here's a digital guidebook that has, all the value add items that we sell. So you can use it to automate marketing so that you're sending key messages to the entire booking party after they log in. We have a review campaign, which will filter for 5-star reviews and then push those to Google, Facebook, or your own website. And then, of course, you can also send a blast to your entire list. Typically, people save that for announcements, like you've launched a new property. So let's say you manage 4 properties in, Eastern Tennessee, and you add a 5th one. Your guest database may be really interested in booking your new home, or maybe you have a special deal that you're launching it. So things that are really high value, or if you have a slower season and you want to attract guests coming back during a shoulder season in your market, text messaging is a great way to send out that special deal or offer or announcement to your loyal customer base, where they're all going to see it. Pretty much everyone on the list is going to interact with the text message that you send.
Gosh, awesome. Those are all good strategies people should be using. Funny thing is, we started doing that as well to remarket to the people that stayed with us. I think we have over 400 emails and phone numbers. So we're looking into keeping them in front of us as a brand and see if they want to stay with us with any discounts and anything that we can offer in between. But you brought up a good point with the review, which I was kind of see if you can deep dive in further. That's
Hmm.
actually a good aspect on what you mentioned was, hey, we can actually send out a message to have people leave reviews on Google or Facebook. How do you pivot and navigate if it's a bad review versus a good review, right? Because you don't want that guest, if they had a bad experience, to really ding your brand and your
Yep.
profile versus that one bad review, which is very difficult on Google to get off. Not even get off, but
Yes.
just to repeatedly get 5 stars, right? So,
Yeah. So the way it works is it sends a link for somebody to review. They click it. In our own StayFi screen, they rate you 1 through 5. If they rate you 5, then we provide the link to say like, oh, can you leave this review on Google? If they leave you 4 or less, they can provide feedback. So we only send the 5 star folks to Google to review. Everyone else, they can leave internal feedback, and then within StayFi, you can see like the sheets weren't clean or whatever they said, right? And you can, even if you send that review during the stay, even or that message, you can maybe even intervene while the guest is still there to improve their experience. So we only send the 5 star folks off to Google to review. And then why do you want to get reviews on Google, right? So
mhm.
to even set that up, you need to set up a Google business page, which will then collect reviews. But the Google reviews is like a key search engine optimization like signal. So if your brand is like, let's say your brand is like Savannah Rental Homes, right? And there's a lot of Savannah rental home companies that you're competing in search with. But
Mhm.
obviously, if people Google Savannah rental homes, you want to appear on that first page. Getting a lot of 5 star Google reviews associated with your brand will help boost your listings. And in terms of organic search, it increases the likelihood that someone searching for a property will come to your direct booking website.
Oh, awesome. Do you think Google reviews is better than Facebook as far as
Personally,
recommendations?
that's where I would focus more time there. Um, but not everyone, some people are really focused on Facebook. They don't have a Google page. Another really good one is collecting reviews on your own website. But a lot of direct booking website, um, so most PMS, so property management software, like Guesty, Logify, OwnerRez, there's a lot of them. Most of them have decent direct booking websites that are kind of out of the box. Most, unfortunately, don't have reviews as part of their kind of setup. So you don't have individual listing reviews, which I think is a huge downside because when you have reviews, this is again like a Google search thing. Google loves when you have new content on your website all the time, and they love reviews. So you can imagine if you're getting, 5 star review every week on this listing page, Google will read that and say, "Oh, this page is constantly getting new content. I want to rank it higher." So I
Mhm.
wish more direct booking websites that came kind of out of the box had a review capability, because that would actually help people rank better in search. That's kind of my own gripe with a lot of PMS websites. But basically, if you can collect reviews on your own website for each listing, that can be super helpful. So we have the option to send people to your website to leave a review if that's a capability that your website has.
Oh, wow. You brought up a good point actually, because we're looking into getting Google reviews. And my number one
Hmm.
question was, well, what about the website? Getting
Yeah.
reviews on the website. And then there's always that push and pull as far as, okay, what should we do? How do you how like what from your opinion, like how would you get both though? Like Google reviews is important, right? But you also may want to touch on the website side of the reviews. Like how do you incentivize, in your opinion, both sides to kind of make sure
Yeah.
they can leave both?
Yeah. So within StayFi, you can actually have both buttons. Like if you
Oh,
have both, you can have like Google, Facebook, and your own website exposed, and the guest could pick one randomly. And then obviously over time, if you want to direct them to one, you could just eliminate the other options. So from our standpoint, that's how you could do it. And then of course, if you're running your own campaigns to have people review outside of StayFi, you could just work on one at a time, or you could have people from different properties push different places. Um, but yeah, PMS websites and there's kind of we see an evolution there too, where people typically start with the out of the box website, whatever PMS they're using, or getting a PMS in the first place. I'd say is, I don't know. It sounds, if a lot of your listeners are kind of starting out in the industry, it's kind of like that first step to move from listing directly on an OTA, maybe just Airbnb, to being able to use a PMS to list on 5 websites is an important first step. And then all of those tools typically have their own white labeled website feature, so you can launch your own branded website, which is super important. But then there's kind of like a next level, which is you hire a third party agency to build a custom website, which there's a lot out there. Like Boostly is
Mhm.
run by this guy named Mark Simpson, which is super popular. And then there's even more kind of high end ones by like IC&D, which is like a big agency that does giant websites. Atlas, which is owned by Beyond Pricing. And then those websites you can, pretty much have however you want, with reviews for each listing, or pull in reviews from other third party sites for each listing. So you get pretty sophisticated once you get to that custom website level. But with the PMS websites, you're pretty limited in functionality in terms of like what's possible in terms of reviews or how your listings are structured there.
Gotcha. Yeah, exactly. You brought up a good point about PMS systems and starting out, even if it's your first property. Just so the viewers understand, they don't have to have a PMS system. They can just have one property and still use your product and services. Is that right?
Yeah, so we see people with one property just redirect to the Airbnb listing, because maybe that's the only place they list, or the Vrbo listing, or whatever it is, because they're listed directly. So we do have people use our service that don't have a direct booking website and don't accept direct bookings, or maybe they only accept direct bookings via email and they send like a contract, which is totally fine. Like their own kind of, without online payments kind of built into the process, right? So we kind of meet people wherever they are in the process of building a brand, if that's their aspiration, or just wanting to run one listing. So, definitely don't need to have that aspiration to build a 200 property management business, right? To use StayFi. People find it useful just, okay, I found, these guests were lovely. Let me email them because they were so great, and ask if they want to come back next year. And if I'll tell them like, oh, if we just do a direct booking, I'll give you 10% off, right? And that's at that level, you can have those one-to-one interactions with folks that right now you're just driving those bookings just through Airbnb.
Nice. That makes perfect sense. And the cool thing about your product too, you mentioned you guys don't offer a contract, right? Is it a month to month, basically?
Yeah. Yeah. So you purchase the device, and then there's a monthly subscription, which varies depending on how many total devices you have online, how many properties you manage. But that can be turned on and off. So we have like seasonal folks in Maine that only rent for like spring, summer, fall, but not in the winter. So they'll turn it off for 3 months because they're unactive, right? So, or maybe, you only may rent a few months of the year. So you can turn the subscription on and off for each property you have within StayFi, just depending on your needs, and whether or not you're renting the property. Or in Florida, another common use case is half the year they have short term, and then half the year they have like a 3 or 4 month renter. And then obviously they don't need StayFi when they have like somebody in the property for 4 months at a time.
Oh, wow. That's actually a good thing. I didn't know that. Every season is different depending on the city, right? So
Yeah,
that's really good that you guys offer. Month to month is a subscription. It works out for everyone. So that's pretty cool.
exactly. Yeah,
That's
because we
really
don't want
cool.
to charge you if you're not using it. So
No,
yeah,
but it's also useful, right? Like
yeah,
marketing is
yeah,
important. So, um,
exactly.
any if any advice you can give anyone that's starting out or just doesn't know how to do marketing, like can you emphasize like how important that is to start, even if it's as basic as you mentioned with one property? It's always good to market in front of everyone whenever you can, and just
Yeah,
to
I
keep in
would.
front of them.
Yeah, I would think about how to brand, even if you only have aspiration to one property. Kind of what is the brand of your property, right? There must be something unique or interesting about it, or just how do you make it? Because we talk about StayFi's bring branding in, but there's a lot of other opportunities to brand inside the home with physical collateral, whether it's signs or a guidebook. I would just think about how do you make your property distinct and stand out in your market. So there is a reason why people would want to come back to your rental and not just book another generic rental on an OTA. So that's definitely first place to start. It's kind of like what's unique or makes you different, and it might not even be the property; it could be you as the owner has like a story, right? So you can craft it any way that makes sense. So that's the first thing. We're just going to figure out what's your special identity, what's kind of like your, you know, interesting items you might bring into the rental to make it feel different or special in the location that you operate in. So kind of start there. Start like with your identity as a business or your identity as a rental. Because once you have that, then it's all about how do I send people to experience that information and learn about it and then book again. Like what's the channel to do that? But it all starts with the brand identity. And then everything else is just kind of tactics, right? It's just like collect the email, send an automated message every month, letting people know how to book Sally's Seashore Cottage again, right? All of that's just kind of transactional. It's not, it's the first most important thing is your identity as a brand and what makes you different as a rental property.
Cool. Good points. Good points. And for viewers out here, what's the best way for them to reach out to you and your company to learn more about your product and services?
Yeah, so on stayfi.com, which is STAYFI, it's like Wi-Fi, but Stayfi. We have a demo page. So I think it's stayfi.com/demo, or you'll see demo on the top. And on that page, there's a 5-minute demo that just goes over how Stayfi works, how to set it up. And there's also a link. So let's say you watch that and you're like, I don't understand this, or I still have more questions. There's also a link to book time with one of our folks here on the team that can then walk you through any questions you have. There's also no cost to creating a StayFi account. So you can also just go to stayfi.com, create an account, look around, go through the setup guide. And then if you do want to move forward, you purchase one of those devices, like I mentioned. And we work anywhere in the world. So if you are outside of the US and you want to use StayFi, you can also contact us and we show you how to get a device that will work with StayFi in your location, no matter where you are in the world. So, just go to stayfi.com. If you have questions, you can just reach out to us through the demo page, and then we can, help you determine kind of what the best next steps are for your business.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I think that was pretty much the summary of everything. Arthur's really good at kind of summarizing exactly what they do and how they can actually help you as a property manager or a short-term rental business to help grow and scale. So if you guys have any questions, just leave your comments below. I'll leave Arthur's information below as far as his company, email, all that good stuff. So you guys can reach out and learn more about the products.
Yeah, for everyone that listens, we can have a promo code as well that they can use to sign up on StayFi. So what do you think about like night 50?
That sounds good. Yeah, night 50 sounds good.
Yeah, so we'll do night 50, KNIGHT 50, and that will give anyone 50% off the first 3 months of the subscription. And when you sign up, you'll see a coupon spot to put that in.
Awesome. Hey, man, that's good. See, there's no reasons why no one should not try out your services, right? Because of that.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, we'll do the promo code to get 50% off the first 3 months. And yeah, I definitely recommend to try out Arthur's and StayFi's services. They're great. We love working with them. Their support's awesome. And if anyone is in the industry, you have to market. You have to get that data like he mentioned. And please, 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 if you have any questions, let me know. Let Arthur know in his company, and we'll be glad to reach out and answer any questions you have. So thank you so much, Arthur, for your dedicated time, for speaking with me and everyone here on this episode. Just thank you, man. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, thanks. It was great. Thank you.
Sounds good. Take it easy.